Hey there, I'm Graham Turnbull, and this is the first ever edition of Viper's Voices, broadcasting to you from my spare bedroom, because that's the only place a guy can get peace and quiet. Joining me on the first edition of Viper Voices, Connor Marritt. Connor, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pretty unique situation. Obviously, this feature itself born out of necessity, really, expected to go to Penticton for game one on a Friday. Season was shut down on a Thursday, and then it's all gone. So we appreciate you taking the time. This is probably the interview we should have done about 3 years ago.
Yeah, no worries. It's the highlight of my day so far. So
Gives us
got
a
a whole lot.
reason to get dressed.
Exactly. Yeah, we won't say how long it's been since I put on a pair of pants. So
Well, we were joking before we went on here that the most brilliant people in the world were the ones that got their hairs cut, colored, styled the day before the pandemic rolled out.
yeah, I know it's a tough look for me right now, but my mom might have to cut it. My grandma used to cut my dad's hair, so maybe I'll go over there. We'll see.
Keep it in the family.
Yeah.
Well, let's start at the beginning. I mean, not everybody knows that you started and lived in Vernon. A lot of the super diehards know that, but for a lot of people, it says on your BCHL profile that you're from Kelowna, which is partially the case, but also not the case. Sort of walk us through what minor hockey was like, the organization you played in Vernon, and how that sort of got you motivated to want to be a Viper one day.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Vernon. So for 12 years, we lived in Coldstream, right under actually Trey's billet house. So that was pretty fun going there and showing the guys my old house. But it was big. It made me want to be a Viper, I think, more than anything. Especially if I grew up in Kelowna, I may have taken the WHL route. But I saw a ton of games and went a lot to their little Viper camps. And I remember getting pushed around on top of the net by these huge bearded men, and that was a highlight for me, and I never forgot that. So, it's a big motivator growing up in Vernon and then being able to play on the team. So
The quality of minor hockey obviously has continued pretty well. I mean, you got a chance to see it over the last 3 years. I mean, minor hockey at this level, all the way through. My son plays initiation hockey here in the North Okanagan, and Vernon minor hockey. I mean, what does the program do for a kid who wants to be, any form of hockey player as they grow older?
yeah, I was really impressed with the Vernon minor hockey program, especially. I got to look at both. I got to look at Kelowna's and Vernon's. They're both awesome. I spent more time in the Vernon Minor Hockey Association, and I had a lot of great memories there from playing on the Pee Wee Wakamotor Mustangs and the Wolfpack, and I even got to experience it again with my billet brother. He's in the system, and it's fun to go watch him play. And the leagues are actually pretty good. He's a pretty good player, and it's pretty fun to go and watch. So.
As you get older, obviously now you sort of get to a fork in the road. Is this something that, first of all, you want to continue on? Are you good enough to continue on? Now you've got some options. I mean, as you get older, I would imagine the prep schools, major midgets. I mean, there are a lot of different opportunities for young men and women and girls growing up playing hockey. I mean, you make the decision to go to OHA. What sort of drew that about? And obviously it's a popular decision. A lot of good hockey players do it.
Yeah, so I was, believe it or not, pretty undersized as a kid. So I didn't really fit into the whole midget age group. There's a lot of guys a lot bigger than me. So we decided as a family it would be better if we went to OHA and played in the Elite 15s age group. So it's only one age group, and you kind of play through that year with your peers. And I think that was a big help for me. It was like we got our own gym, ice time every day. The school was great. And, after that first year, we were hooked. And that's how they'll get you. Because once you go there, it's pretty tough to leave. Those places are really special. So.
And you go to OHA, there's lots of good players that have played the BC Hockey League that have come from that level. I imagine a lot of them that have gone on to the Western Hockey League as well. What were some of the things that you enjoyed about being there, and were you satisfied with the way it sort of got you exposed, whether it was, the eyes from the dub or whether it was contacts that you were able to make in junior A?
All that, everything. They were amazing on getting people to come and watch you play. They had great relationships with a lot of the coaches in junior A and the WHL. Dixon Ward actually was one who gave me the chance, and he's got connections everywhere. I feel like he's the man there. So a big thanks to him. And yeah, I mean, going back to what it was like there, all the coaches I've had were awesome coaches. They've had great resumes. So just even learning a little bit about systems before I came to junior, because we were running some pretty tight systems in OHA just because I had so much more time than the minor hockey teams. And I think that really helped me kind of fit into the BCHL a little quicker than most. So.
Did you feel any pressure? Like, do any of the guys at that level start to feel pressure about getting an opportunity? It's all great. You're playing the game you love to play. You're playing in a great place, but there's always that next step. I'd imagine there had to be some internal pressure on yourself, on some of your teammates to be able to make the jump to the next level and do so the right way. Take us through the mindset of a guy 15 years old who, is starting to maybe get some attention. Maybe they're not getting attention and they're really trying to make a go out of this. So what is the pressure like on young people like that? We just see the outside of it. It's very interesting to know sort of the internal conflict that some of you guys have.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. I actually got my first kind of go in the BCHL. I practiced with the V's. That was my first practice. And they're just right across the doors or the rink there. So it was pretty easy, just kind of walk over. But I got my first look at the BCHL and I was 16 and I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can make the jump. It was an intense practice, but it was a lot of fun. And, kind of got me thinking of what could happen. So I think it was a big motivator. And then from there on, I ended up going to Marritt for a little bit. That would have been a little funny playing there with my namesake. And then, I had a pretty good game. I think it was actually in Kelowna and at the Kimmett tournament, and Vernon was there, and he asked to meet with me through my coach, and that was the first time I met Ferns, and he was pretty keen on me then, and I was pretty happy about that. And we kept in touch the latter of the year, and after playoffs, he reached out and said, would you like to play for us next year? So that was really exciting for me. And yeah.
And it sort of gives you an idea too, like, as you said, you started in Penticton with a practice, you had some time with Marritt, but then it took, the approach of the head coach, Mark Ferner, to sort of make that step and take the process. And for a young guy, I imagine that sometimes makes all the difference. The practice is great. The exposure is great in Marritt, but it sort of took that extra step from the person that wanted you probably the most.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty fun meeting him and knowing the career he's had and the success that team's had and where I grew up. So,
what was your first memory of your first training camp / spring camp? Because you mentioned the first practice was kind of an eye opener for you. I would imagine first spring camp, first training camp at the junior level had to be a bit of an eye opener too.
It's actually a pretty funny story. So a lot of us go a little early for a couple practices before training camp just to meet the guys. And so I was thinking, I'm going to go in early. I'm going to get settled. So I went to Kaltar Place and I'm sitting in the dressing room and I'm like, man, no one's getting here. So I call Colton Bilodeau because I knew him as a kid. I'm like, hey, where is everyone? And he told me the practice was at PV. So I was sitting at the wrong rink for an hour and I've got 20 minutes to be on the ice. I'm half dressed at Kaltar. So I rip off all my stuff, get in the car, drive to PV. I'm 5 minutes late on. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to survive. And it turns out Mark wasn't even there and it was just Jags running the practice. So they were all kind of laughing, joking about me. But yeah, so it was a little stressful for me, but then it was fun. We just did some drills and got ready before camp. So
that's really neat. That could only happen to a new guy trying to get his feet wet. You do all the right things, and then you did about 80% of the right things. Ended up in the right spot. What was the rookie year like for you? I mean, to go back a couple of years ago, I mean, that team was extremely good. You go out in 6 games to Wenatchee, and they were a firehouse as well. I mean, what was that rookie year like for you? Maybe we'll sort of break it down into 2 parts. I mean, I'd imagine you make the team out of training camp. There's so much talent on that hockey team. There's so much veteran leadership. You get some 20-year-olds back that you may not have been expecting back. I mean, what was that whole first half of the year dynamic like for you? That was a heck of a hockey team.
It was stressful, especially in camp. We just kept trading for more forwards, and I was kind of counting the numbers and I was trying to figure out where I fit in the whole scheme of things. But eventually, after a little bit a time, I'm freaking out, and my dad trying to calm me down, saying there's nothing you can do but work. It ended up working out. I remember saying to Ferns, I'll drive the bus. I just want to be on the team. So it was pretty special after training camp and after the first game, and he sat us down and said, "This is our team for the year." And yeah, like you said, a bunch of those 20s came back, and I think that was awesome for me. I got to see what it was like to be on a really good team, on a winning team, and I had a lot of role models on that team as well. So I think that was a really important year for me, just to see how close the team could be and how good they can be if they work together and follow the system. So yeah, I think overall that was probably one of my most important parts of junior A, just that very beginning of my first year. So
And lots of talent too. There were guys like Stapley and Lambert, and I know I'm going to be missing a few. Mokatari, Sandu. I mean, that was a pretty unique group of talented people that could also sort of fit within the system. Was there a moment, that maybe you learned the most about operating under that system, knowing that, hey, you know what, the points eventually will come. It's junior hockey. You're not necessarily expected to, put up points in your first year, but it'll be the second and third years that you do that. Was there anything that sort of you wanted to learn the most in that first year, and do so from guys like Lambert and Stapley and Offberg and Kelly and those sorts of guys?
Mm-hmm. I'd probably say the person I looked up to most is Jags, and that's just because one of my biggest values is consistency, and I don't think I've ever seen him have a bad night. So I was a little bit of a bench warmer my first year, but I mean, like, who isn't? So I got to watch how they played, and I got to watch how they acted in the room, what they did before games and practices, and that was really big for me, and I was really really thankful for my
battling the technology. We're back. Connor Marritt's back with us, battling an old laptop. But before we sort of got cut up there, we were talking a little bit about some of the consistencies. You were talking about some of the guys that you looked up to in your first year, and Jagger was one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I value consistency a lot, and he was the one I think that demonstrated the most. And it was cool to see how he acted and what he did on and off the ice. And yeah, I mean, I almost kind of forgot the question a little bit, but
hey, that's okay. When it comes to pumping Jagger Williamson's tires, I'm sure you could go on for hours.
Yeah.
So it obviously doesn't work out the way you guys wanted it to. Knocked out in 6 games against Wenatchee. So many different elements sort of went into the way that series went. The injuries, things of that nature. You get a chance back at it the year after. Jagger's back, which is a bit of a surprise. Jesse's back, a bit of a surprise. And the team, though, I've never seen an injury-riddled season like that before. That was an uncanny thing where, I remember one game in Trail, you guys had 9 guys out of the lineup, and there were 5 APs in the lineup, and somehow you ended up winning the hockey game. I mean, what did the regular season sort of teach you, through that whole process where all of a sudden your top guys weren't available to you for most of that season, and you guys were able to still sort of hover around that 500 mark?
Mm-hmm. For us, it honestly might have been a blessing in disguise with those injuries, because guys like Jagger, who may have small injuries throughout the year and play through them, if he gets a major one, now he's nursing all these smaller ones and he's ready to go for playoffs. Same with Jesse with the suspensions, and then it also teaches guys like me how to play those big minutes and how to step into those roles. And I think it was very beneficial for me. It kind of sucks for all those other guys, but for me, it kind of worked out. And then even the same with Josh Ladd. I got to play with him in the middle, and Alex Swetlikoff leaving opened up another spot for us to move up. And yeah, I mean, I've never seen that many guys fall, but I think we did a really good job of trying to stay positive and trying to keep going day after day. And yeah, I'm really proud of that team. That was a fun year for sure.
And it was really interesting to watch how the playoffs sort of went. I mean, it was the team was red hot coming out of Christmas, as you'd sort of anticipate when everybody got healthy. And then, some of the other teams and the other tiers started to fall. And all of a sudden, you're facing Salmon Arm in the first round of the playoffs, and you were able to get home ice advantage. And I know that series ended in 5 games, but, first of all, you played 7 games worth of hockey in those 5 games. And each one of those was about as airtight as it comes. But it seemed like, I would imagine, from the first half of the year plus the last half, you were playing playoff games since October. So how much did that first round matchup in your experience before help that?
Well, last year was a really tight interior. I think every team was really good, and that shows with Trail taking us to 7 games. So Every team was good, and we knew that going in, and we knew every game was going to be a battle. And we were hot, like you said, after Christmas, and I think we built up a lot of confidence after beating some pretty good teams in that stretch. And then we knew we were getting Jags and Jesse back, so it was almost like we just kept building each other up, and then we were like, we can do this. And after, I think the biggest turning point was that game, the triple OT game where we sealed off Salmon Arm, and we were like, we can do this. Like, we just went a game basically without being scored on against a really good team. And then obviously Game 7 against Trail, and then so I mean, that was a fun year, and props to Prince George too. They're a really good team, and we knew that. But
You hung right with them. I mean, that was a 4-game sweep. But I mean, anybody watched that series or listened to that series or followed that series could take one look at it and know that there were probably moments in that series where it could have turned around. And it had to hurt, but I would imagine at the end of it, just like anything, you come back. But there was a light at the end of the tunnel for you. I mean, going into your final year of junior hockey at the time, no scholarship. We talked about the pressures of moving on to junior from Bantam or OHA in your case. I would imagine that pressure gets, magnified quite a bit when it comes to where am I going to play next year? What form of education am I going to get? What is that process like going into your final year of junior, knowing that, this is either going to be the year that you make or break it and move on?
yeah, well, it's a little scary. I think there's a couple years of everyone's hockey career where like, where am I playing next? And it's scary. You got to think about life, and a lot of us don't really want to do that. We just want to be in our little hockey bubble and with our friends and having a good time. But there comes a time where this stuff has to come up, and I was pretty lucky that Northern Michigan came to quite a few of our games, and I was buddies with a guy that committed there, and everything just kind of worked out. They liked the way I played, and I love their school and I love their program, and so that worked out for me. But a lot of guys, even Josh Laddick, going back to last year, he didn't have one till almost the end of the year. I think he committed in February. So, that's a lot of pressure to not only score, but play well every night, because you never know which night they're going to watch. I've seen it elevate people's games, and I've seen it bring people down as well. And, it's pretty tough to manage, but.
Well, before we talk about Northern Michigan, obviously that's where you're off to, hopefully, in the near future, assuming all of this works out. But you get the scholarship now. You're into your final year. Changes with the Vipers, but you get a number of bodies back. I mean, all things considered, you guys were able to return quite a few guys, and it was an interesting year, up and down. I mean, on paper, 30 wins is more than the year before when you guys went to the league final. It was just a strange season to watch, all things considered. And then, bam, you hit the postseason, and the matchup that, was probably on paper the most difficult, you guys ended up essentially rolling through the Wild in that series. I mean,
Yeah.
What was your takeaway from that year, and how did that help everybody on the roster sort of grow as a player? It seemed like there were a lot of growing pains, specifically early.
Yeah, well, like you said, the interior again was so tight, especially those middle three teams, us, Salmon Arm, and Wenatchee, and I think it came down to one shootout goal that that we didn't get, that could have cost us third and home ice. So it was tight, and we knew it was tight, and we had a lot of guys battling injuries throughout the year. We knew that we weren't playing our best hockey at times, but when we did play our best hockey, we were a really good team. We were tough to beat, and we knew what we had to do. And I think going into playoffs, everyone just kind of bought into to what we had to do. And our power play was good, but I think our defense was the reason that we were so good. They were unbelievable in the back end, and it was awesome to see. It was a lot easier to play, and it was pretty fun. So.
Shame the way that it went. I thought for sure that first time in 3 years you guys were on pace to play the Vs. It never really feels like a playoffs unless you play the Vs. From my history with this group for 7 years, if you're not playing Penticton, I mean, it just doesn't feel too much like playoffs. So you were set, ready to go, and then all of a sudden the hammer comes down and everything comes to a conclusion. You know, I don't expect you to go into too much detail, but sort of walk us through some of the emotions and the timelines and what was going on with you and some of the guys where all of a sudden everybody was pretty much gone within 24 hours.
Yeah, well, this would have been my first time playing Penticton in the playoffs, and I was excited for it. I was ready. I think the boys were ready, but obviously we got the news, and it didn't feel real the first little bit. We were looking at the updates and kind of speculating. It was a bunch of postponed and canceled until further notice, so we weren't sure kind of what was happening. And then we got hit with the news, and then obviously, like with this whole virus, it's contagious and everything, so it's tough to get together before people go. And you know, I got guys that I like might never see again that I didn't really get to see at the end of the year like we usually do, and you know, that's tough for me. It's hard to see those guys put in all that work with me in the year and build such a bond, and then just like that it gets taken away from us. But you know I'm not the only one suffering. I'm not the one suffering the most, and I still had an awesome year and an awesome time in Vernon, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. So,
well, points 40 and 47 over your last 2 years, and I'm going to share this at the end of the video. I'll put a little highlight package together. I texted you this not too long ago. Your first BC Hockey League goal was a point shot deflection in the right circle. Did you ever go back and watch this? Because your last one in Game 5, which pretty much clinched the game, was the exact same.
Yeah.
A little spooky.
Yeah, I got that. My first goal actually saved on my phone. I watch it every now and then. It's pretty funny. I think it was me, Nico, and Billy on a forecheck, and then went back to Younger and tipped it against the Nanaimo. So for my first, that was pretty fun. And yeah, Nick Kent shot from the point and kind of same spot, same side. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Kind of comes full circle there. And yeah,
you can't write stuff like that. It just sort of happens the way it does. So, you know, again, all things considered, this pandemic going on, but you know, your future's not stopped now. Obviously the junior hockey portion of it is, but you've got things to move forward to. Northern Michigan University, I mean, seemed like a great program. They've done a lot of recruiting here in the BC Hockey League. We've seen their logo pop up quite a bit. But before we talk about them, I mean, as you were going through the postseason or right into the postseason, not a lot of people know this, but you were doing schoolwork. You had to get yourself ready. I mean, this is something that sometimes gets overlooked. It's like, oh, I graduated 2 years ago. You know, I can take a couple of years off, get ready for college, and then all of a sudden, not the case. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so there's an NCAA rule where if you turn 21 during the season, during your playing, you have to be a full-time student. So I'm a March baby, so I figured we were going to be playing. And turns out I missed it by a day. So that's too bad. But, you know, better safe than sorry. But, yeah, no, I got all my psychology notes right here. I got a test coming up, and then I'm also in stats and astronomy as well. And, you know, those days were pretty tough. I had to put away, like, there's a lot of, we like to go to sushi and a movie on Tuesdays. I got to study on Tuesdays, got tests on Wednesdays, and, you know, it's different for sure, but I still had fun. And you know, I had my 2.5 years without doing any school, but it was time to get back. And yeah, I remember I didn't miss it. So,
well, hopefully when this thing's over, you'll be going there. What are you most looking forward to? I mean, the hockey part, I would imagine, I mean, walk us through some of the facilities, but I imagine it's also, I mean, you were away from home, but only by like 45 minutes. Now you're on the other side of a different country, going to school. I mean, what are some of the things that you're A, excited about, B, nervous about, and 3, you know, really just embracing and getting a chance to enjoy?
I'm always excited to meet the guys. It's always fun. You know, I'm sure we're gonna have an awesome group again this year, and just to form those new connections is always really fun, and to hear their stories. And obviously, I love coming to the rink and practicing. And you know, they got really good facilities. They're actually doing renovations and stuff right now, so that's pretty cool. And Olympic ice, so lots of skating. Got to get in shape over the summer. And yeah, I guess you're right. I haven't been away from home. Even when I went to OHA, I bussed back and forth, hour there, hour back every day. And probably the biggest thing is I won't get my mom's care packages anymore. Her muffins and crater cake that she makes, and she's pretty upset that I'm going to be leaving, but they said they're going to make quite a few trips down. So we'll see. They won't be able to watch every game anymore.
No question. Well, and you're not the only one in the family who's gone off to get an education either. So you think that might soften the blow a little bit, but I guess the baby boy's moving on, and it's not the easiest thing to get over.
Yeah, the nest is going to be empty. So,
well, let's talk about the sports system. I mean, I know that I've seen your mom and dad pretty much at every game. The few exceptions of the extra long ones, even your grandparents, I've seen them out and about. I mean, people don't have success in anything, in this case, hockey, without a support system that's pretty close to rock solid. And, from the outside looking in on this guy's perspective, it seems like you've got that. So maybe speak to how your mom, your dad, and your entire family's been able to support you and get you to the goals that you've wanted to achieve.
Well, I mean, it starts back in Vernon, minor hockey, those 6 a.m. practices that they got up every day and drove me, and maybe pancakes before them, drove me back to school. And I can't thank them enough. I actually played on the Kelowna Heat spring team. My dad would drive me all the way up to Kelowna for practices on the west side for practices, hour and a half there and back. And I mean, the sacrifice they've made with OHA, it's not a cheap school to go to for 1 year, let alone 3. So they made a huge sacrifice there for me. And they're pretty invested in the game, just like I am. But they let me choose. They make sure this is what I want and kind of let me have my own freedom. So it's going to be tough moving away from them again, but I think they're excited for me, and I'm thankful for that. So,
well, I'm going to guess, and every parent, I would imagine, makes those investments knowing that it's, hoping that's the right thing to do and it's the best thing by their son or their daughter. But for you getting that scholarship and being able to continue an education in hockey, I'm sure that's no other form of payment in return that they would want to see other than that. Connor, before we wrap things up, I mean, an opportunity, you've been in Vernon now for 3 years. An opportunity. We're going to put this up on the Vipers YouTube page and the website and whatnot to try to share it with everybody. So platform's yours, my friend, to any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us.
Wow. Well, I'd like to thank you for this interview and being the best announcer in the league. It's been awesome. The ownership, both years. Duncan, obviously, thank you very much for what he did. And Erica actually reached out to me after winning the Duncan Ray Award, and that was really special to me. And thanks to Tom and John for believing in me and helping me through all this. And then obviously Ferns and Jason McKee, and those are two of my favorite coaches that I've ever had. And it goes from everywhere. Skip, my trainer, my first year, Ty, he's awesome. Ty Robinson, shout out to him. And then, my teammates, I think, is the biggest thing. They make it so special and so fun, and that goes along with the fans as well. It's so much more fun when you guys all show up and support us and are loud, and it's a lot easier to dig your head in on a back check when everyone's screaming. So it's been awesome. I wouldn't trade my time in Vernon for anything. It's been the most special 3 years of my life. So thank you.
Connor, we appreciate the time. You're the first guest on Vipers Voices with me. Next week, though, you'll get a kick out of this. We've teed up Michael Uffberg to be the second guest. God. I'm going to have to invest in the extra hour necessary to do this, but keep an eye out for it. It should be a lot of fun. Connor, thanks so much for doing this.
I'm excited to hear that guy's laugh again.
It's going to be contagious, even through the computer.
Yeah.
We really appreciate this, man. All the best. Thanks for the time. And, we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Connor Marritt got the tip on it in front, changed directions on Austin Roden. The young man's got his first in the BC Hockey League, and he gives his team a 1-0 lead early in the first. McDonald powering in, one hands one to the goal, stopped by Altman, big rebound, Marritt shot block. Dawson Holt turns and fires, and it hit the outside of the net. What a chance that was. Kent, wrist shot, tip, scores! deflection in front of the net. A point shot from Nick Kent goes through. Marritt deflects it past Altman. 29 seconds into the third. The Vipers have a 5-2 lead.